The Sportsline Podcast is on the air, and for you leap year babies like the late Henri Richard, former NHL goaltender Cam Ward, Tyrese Halliburton of the Indiana Pacers, and even motivational speaker Tony Robbins, happy birthday. Folks, the Sportsline Podcast is a space for the many extraordinary athletes, coaches, executives, and broadcasters that got their start right here in the Golden Horseshoe. And in my opinion, this upcoming fella is traveling on a road to success. At the tender age of just 5 years old, this Hamilton native was muting the volume on his NHL video games and was calling the play-by-play. That dream and passion to be on the microphone directed him to Mohawk College, where he got his first taste of television and radio. Now in the business, this versatile broadcaster has become the voice of the city, calling everything from hockey, baseball, basketball, and professional wrestling. In his current role, he's the voice of the OHL's Bulldogs. Have a listen.
As Icarus once flew too close to the sun, these Bulldogs maybe stepped too close to a Spitfire propeller and got nicked in game one. Morrison onto the right. McTavish on the change-up and scores! Artem Grushnikov, left point, settles off the backboards. It bounces out to the slot. Morrison's there, bouncing puck won't sit. Over to Hayes, he lights the lamp! Avery Hayes on the whack over from Logan Morrison. More Morrison left, low, Hayes off the goal line and scores! Avery Hayes has stayed white hot on this playoff run. It's 4-1 Bulldogs as Hayes tucks in a beauty. Johnston again to the slot. It'll be sent off the board. This series is going to Windsor 1-1.
Well, he's a bit of a bigwig now as he carries the title of Manager of Broadcasting and Communications for the Brantford Bulldogs. Reed Duthie, so pleased to have you here on the Sportsline Podcast. That was a real nice sound up that we heard of you there.
I still get goosebumps. Thanks for having me, Bob. I still get goosebumps every time that I think back of that 2022 playoff run. It was amazing, and it was great to just be a small part of that team. And actually, I found out later, I broadcasted games 5 through 7 with a chest infection. I did not know it. I thought I was just losing my voice from the long season, and Dr. Rob for the Bulldogs told me, no, you might need to take something before the Memorial Cup, fellas. Oh, okay. Well, I was belting her out anyway.
There, you're sounding fine there. You know, and you're sounding fine right now. Let's talk about what's going on with these Hamilton/Brantford Bulldogs. I guess I can't quite lose the Hamilton label yet, though I do know that it is Brantford, the product right now. They are playing great hockey. You have to be having more fun than I think anyone expected in this first-year club in that city.
You are exactly right. We didn't know coming into this season exactly what it was going to entail. It's still a young team, and people look at some of the more veteran presence on the roster, like a Lawson Shirk or Matteo Drobak in goal, but like even Florian Jacki, who's an 04, but he's only in his second real season in the OHL. Adrian Rebello, same thing. And then a whole group of young guys, Merrick Van Acker, Jake O'Brien, and on the back end, you look at a young guy like Daniel Chen, who's getting monster minutes. Owen Protsu came in halfway through the year. Lucas Moore's been around 3 years. He's still just in 05. He could play another 2 years in the OHL. This group came together after a tough start, and head coach Jay McKee, Andreas Carlson, Andrew Campbell, and Matt Turek pulling the strings up top. Everybody is really committed, and the team bought in once again. It's been a key to the success that Jay McKee and that coaching staff have had, the communication with young players, getting them to buy into what they're preaching. And it's not hard to buy in when you see that kind of success on the ice year after year.
Well, and I think the crazy thing about it, I think most in the community, mainly in the Ontario Hockey League that would watch his team very, very closely, kind of thought, you know what, this is a good young team, some good draft picks. Jake O'Brien, you talked about him. He's setting rookie scoring records. You're getting the good, solid goaltending from your veterans, but they probably aren't ready yet. Then they make some trades at the trade deadline, getting rid of a Jorian Donovan, who would have been a lovely piece for any contending team. Yet, all of a sudden, the Bulldogs went from kind of middle ground to a contending team. First place, here they are, after dumping some of the veteran players. That had to be a surprise.
A little bit, and it went along at the same time as Tomas Hammer, who came in the early part of the season, gets injured, and Nick Lardis had been out for a stretch of time as well, as this team was coming together in the second half. But you bring over Daniel Sobolev from the Niagara Ice Dogs, you bring over Zachary Lavoie from the Niagara Ice Dogs as well.
Those players have to be real hungry.
Yeah, two separate trades, and those guys were excited when they put on the black and gold. And and Owen Protz coming in from the Sudbury Wolves, and it seemed like the team went, we got a pretty good locker room, and the depth of it. It went along at the same time as Lawson Shirk, Ben Bujold, and Adrian Rebello combined together on a checking line that has not given up a goal 5-on-5 in a month and a half of hockey.
Wow.
It's just been the perfect storm of guys coming together at the right time. And as we talked about the veteran in goal, David Egorov is going to be a great goaltender. He's in 06. Mateo Drobak just stopped 53 shots against the Memorial Cup host on Sunday. This guy has taken his game to a completely different level, and we're seeing it all the way through the lineup. Can't wait to hear Merrick Van Acker's name called in the first round of the NHL draft, too.
Well, so whatever happens with this team right now, it would have to be, as we stand right now, real close. You've clinched a playoff spot already. You're going to be top 1 or 2 probably in the conference. I guess you'd have to say, mixing that into the big changes of moving into Brantford, how has that sort of transition been outside of the success of the hockey club?
Fantastic. The community in Brantford has really embraced us, and I get the chance to go around and be with the players when they go do school visits and the different things in the community. And everybody is crazy about this hockey club. And one of my favorite things is, as much as I love being in the booth and I love all the things I get to do on that side, when you get to walk into a classroom and you're followed by Florian Jacki, or you're followed by Nick Lardis, or any of the guys on the Bulldogs, and the kids' faces light up, that tells you why you do it right there. Mm-hmm. And it's been every school we go to, every outing that we're at, every sponsor that we've talked to, they all love it and they get it. It's really been something that's brought the community of Brantford together, and at the same time still drawing fans from Hamilton. We still have TV coverage in Hamilton. Mm-hmm. I think it's really brought two cities kind of together as, let's call it 1.5. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're all quite one, but it feels like everybody's kind of gotten onto this ride and everybody wants to be a part of this. And we couldn't be happier to have that feeling of a giant community all coming together where all the fans kind of know one another in the building.
Right. And so much learning has come along the way, I think, for this club, getting into that new community and being accepted. I think that's certainly an important part of the success of this team right now. I think of other people that are involved in the settling into the Brantford Bulldogs, and I know there are so many hands and minds that have put things together, but it also comes with good ownership as well, too. And Michael Andlauer, I mean, what can you say about the guy?
I am so privileged to get to work with Michael Andlauer, work for Michael Andlauer. I don't know how many people have the kind of experience that I have with an owner in sports, where Michael will walk into my booth on a game night, at an intermission, at a commercial break, put his arm around me, give me a hug. Hey, how's it going, Reed? How's the kids? He knows my kids' names. Like, how many people can say that about an owner who owns all sorts of businesses? And obviously now with the Ottawa Senators, he's still at Bulldogs games. Actually, a funny story, after the comeback game against Kitchener on home ice,
yes,
went down to see the coaches to talk to them about, wow, what just happened. I opened the door, and Michael Andlauer was sitting directly across from me, and I said, Michael, what are you doing here? And he looked back and goes, Reader, I still own the team. Yeah, you do. How's things?
You know what? And he owns that other team we just saw seconds ago, and that, I think that goes to the character of the man. And yes. I mean, you know him even well. I know him well. You know him obviously well beyond myself. But boy, he carries himself with this. I'm not a big guy. I'm not a big dude. I'm not important. I'm not more important than you are. Just meets you right eye level.
Yep, absolutely. To the day that he hired me to be officially a part of the Bulldogs as a team, he took me out for breakfast. And we went to a Sunset Grill. And it was like sitting across the table talking to another just hockey guy. We talked about the team. We talked about a little bit about each other and kind of got to know each other on a more personal level before we even talked about the role, the job, what was going to happen. Like I said, I'm so privileged to get to work for him. Every time I get the opportunity to talk about it, I talk about it in such glowing terms because I really feel it from the heart that he really cares about everyone in our office. Mm-hmm. And that was such a big part in when we weren't able to continue at First Ontario Centre, going to Brantford, because it made the most sense, not just from a business perspective. Michael came to us and said it makes the most sense from a personal perspective, because it didn't challenge the staff. You know, it's a bit of a move up the road, but he could have taken it anywhere. There was any number of communities where the Bulldogs could have gone.
He could have sold.
He could have sold. Absolutely, he could have. And he did this to really help us to continue on in the positions that we were in. He values what we bring as much or more than we value what he does for us. And I think that is what makes him so special. And he does that for everything that he has his hands in. He values everyone that works with him, for him, all the way along the line. And Steve Staios is the same way.
Well, that's where I was going with next, because now Michael has got that ownership kind of label, but there's a hockey mind there. And I think both you and I knew that at some point, this guy wasn't going to be in the AHL. He wasn't going to be in the OHL. He was going to be at the top level at some point. Steve Staios is a guy that deserves everything that I think he's gotten to this point. He's proven it.
100%. A Hamilton guy that built his way up through the NHL. And you think of his playing career, the stick-to-itiveness of his playing career, going through St. Louis to Boston and on to Edmonton, where he became an icon, a shot-blocking genius. You spend 5 minutes with Steve Staios, your IQ goes up 20 points. And I've said that for years. I've had the opportunity to sit in his office and have him essentially explain to me how he would build a team. And it just mind-blowing. He is so far ahead on the chessboard of where everyone else is. It's spectacular. And another guy like Michael that he knows everybody's name. He knows the interns' names. He knows the volunteers' names. He knows my kids' names. He'll text me out of the blue from Ottawa just to ask me how the family's doing.
Nice.
That is the kind of man that Steve Staios is. And he was one of the ones that really had a big hand in me coming to the Bulldogs. And I wanted to work for Steve Staios. That was a huge draw for me because he's one of my favorite players growing up. In fact, I talked about doing the school visits with the players. When I was a kid at A.M. Cunningham, just up the road here in Hamilton, he was the player that did my school visit.
Wow.
And I still have the hockey card that he signed for me that day. And that was when he was a Boston Bruin, which to me, a Boston Bruin from Hamilton, it doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any better than that.
There he goes with his Bruins talk. We'll have some of that Bruins talk. Just hold on a little bit here. Let's stick with the Bulldogs for a little bit, because you've been extra lucky. There are some guys in this business that don't get to call the games at the level that you have gotten to. You've gotten to the Memorial Cup twice. I've been by your side watching you as well, too, reporting for CHCH at both of those games in Regina and out in St. John. What a marvelous, amazing thing to see the Bulldogs on the national level. Let's talk about, first of all, that 2018 run, which I'll tell you one thing that will never lose perspective in that 2018 run was a game, I believe it was about February. The Bulldogs take the bus road, and you know about those bus trips up to Sault Ste. Marie, and they get drilled.
Yep.
They get drilled. And so much that the head coach at that point was upset that they were piling on. And then something flicked on, and they went on the run.
Robert Thomas, when he came in and the Bulldogs loaded up, there was an adjustment period. And it was because as that season had gone along, guys had gotten into roles where, Ryan Moore and Nick Camano were helping to run that offense. Brandon Sagen had become incredible. Arthur Kelly scored 31 goals as a 16-year-old. That just doesn't happen. And when Robert Thomas came in, and I left out Mackenzie Entwistle, Matt Strome, and Isaac Nurse, who were an incredible line together in the playoffs. When Robert Thomas came in, it was almost a situation of, okay, he's the best player in the OHL. Where does he fit in this lineup? And I think it took John Gruden and the coaching staff and Robert Thomas himself a little bit of time to find the right fit for Robert Thomas. Mm-hmm. Then he got to play with Brandon Sagen. Bingo. That's when everything just started to click. And those two guys had incredible chemistry together. Robert Thomas could control the game in the palm of his hand.
So good.
The only player that's ever won an OHL championship and a Stanley Cup back-to-back.
That's true.
And he was just brilliant that whole run. Won the Wayne Gretzky MVP award for a reason. But that whole team, if you look back at the depth of that team, Thomas and Sagen running line one, Studenic, Camano, and Ryan Moore is line two, Matthew Strome, Mackenzie Entwistle, Isaac Nurse is line three, and that guy Kaliev is riding line four at times. That's just downright.
Fulcher and net.
Caden Fulcher and net. Riley Stillman, Justin Lemke, Ben Gleason, Nick Mattinen, all those guys playing pro hockey now. And Connor Walters and Jack Hanley on the third pair that just got the job done. And Connor Walters actually scored the goal to clinch the Eastern Final against Kingston. That group was so much fun to be around because they kept getting counted out. Mm-hmm. Everybody thought, well, you're not going to get past Kingston. They did it. You're not going to get past the Sioux. They did it. And they're the group. Mackenzie Entwistle went up to the Sioux and said, oh, you think you can't lose on home ice? Let me show you something. They were a great group to be around because they weren't going to let anybody tell them no. That season, I didn't get to go to Regina because I was still just on the TV side. I wasn't, but I watched every game that they were out there. I wanted to be out there so bad to be a part of that. I got to be a part of it in 22, but that group was a ton of fun, and I got to know a lot of those guys really well. I still get to talk to a lot of them. We do a lot of, it's fun to be on this side of the podcast, but when I do mine, I get to go back and talk to a lot of them as alumni, which still seems weird after seeing them get drafted at 16 and to think of them now that they've been alumni for so many years. That was a special group that proved a lot of doubters wrong, and I think that little chip on the shoulder, that's what drove them.
The 2018 crew had to prove themselves. They had to grind. They weren't a high-scoring team. They were more goaltending and defensive-minded and scored timely goals, like you said.
And then Robbie Thomas would do something just ridiculous, like put the puck through his legs. He'd do an open net.
It was unbelievable. And look at him now. Leading the Blues in points right now, I'm pretty sure. But the 2022 group was a different group. They were crazy. They broke records. They scored goals almost at ease. Like, there was times they went on runs, win streaks. Like, I would be on the desk at CH and I'd be like, well, yeah, they were on a 7-game heater. Like, it just kept happening all season long. And they blew through everyone. That 2022 crew was something special with Jay McKee.
Never thought that we would see a team go 12-0 through the Eastern Conference. The Bulldogs didn't lose on home ice from December the 28th until Game 1 of the OHL Finals. They lost a game, I think it was 8-2 to the Erie Otters. And I remember talking to the guys after that, and Colton Kammer, who will never get enough credit, the captain of that Bulldogs team that's now won a national championship with UNB and is likely to go win another one. Kate Landry, Isaac Nursall on that team. He said to me after, we never want to feel like that again. And they didn't. They just took it to teams. And another funny story, I remember Steve Stouts called me on a Thursday to say, we've acquired Arbor Jackeye. Whoa, okay, well, all right, clear the spring calendar. I guess we're going for it. And I did the release and everything for that. And we did the media stuff around it. And we're getting towards the deadline. I hadn't heard from Steve in a couple of days. So on a Sunday, I put my feet up. I'm going to watch the Rams play. Put my feet up downstairs. My phone goes off. I didn't even check it. Just answer the phone. Hello? We've just traded for Mason McTavish. My first reaction was, who is this? Raider, it's Steve. We just traded for Mason McTavish. Oh, geez. All right. Well, forget the football game. Once we made those moves, that kind of signaled we're all in. And everybody, and rightfully so, went crazy about the acquisitions of Mason McTavish and Arbor Jackeye. Logan Morrison and Avery Hayes drove that team from the beginning of the season.
So true.
Logan Morrison was the engine. He was the superstar that never got enough credit. And that team was on a roll way before those guys arrived. They were the pieces that put that team over the top. And they became key pieces, but they were the ones that took it to the next level. It was Logan Morrison, Avery Hayes, and Ryan Humphrey driving one line. And then Mark Duarte, George Diaco, and Yanni Mishak, three guys who, when you would look at them individually, would go, how's that going to work as a line? They carried the offense while the rest of the team was getting it all together. And then once they got it together, accepted roles as a third-line group that could go out and score goals and shut other teams down. And when you get Mason McTavish and you get Ryan Winterton back from a shoulder injury early on in the season, and Patrick Thomas made the team that year because Ryan Winterton was hurt. And by the time that Winterton came back, when Jay McKee went to Mason McTavish and said, who do you want to play with? Patrick Thomas. Oh, yeah, and that Winterton guy. So they ended up, Thomas, who made the team because of the injury to Winterton, ended up running on a playoff to a championship with Ryan Winterton and Mason McTavish. There were so many stories from that team and just fun times being around them. They were a loose group. It felt like a brotherhood with those guys. We could be here for days just recounting the great stories that they had.
So many great moments.
The guys trying to reward Yanni Mishak in Game 4 against North Bay because he had worked his tail off and he'd worked through injuries and everything that he came through. And everybody passing him the puck in Game 4 of that series so he would get his hat trick and finally did it in the third period. That was something really special to see, that no matter where they were, they never lost sight of that for one another. And it was just so spectacular to see.
I always think of a goal that young Mishak scored. I think we might have played it down the back end of that 2022 roll. he had scored, I believe, 30, 35 goals in the regular season.
Yeah, it was something
he was up in there. But in the playoffs, he struggled. He could not get the puck in the net. And he scored a big overtime winner, which I thought was so sweet out in St. John. And it was, you could just see the joy on that guy's face.
3 years to the day he was drafted by the Bulldogs, he scored that goal. Like, it just, the story wrote itself that night. I didn't have to put a whole, there it is there. I didn't have to put a whole lot of thought into that call. It was the semifinal goal that lifted us after a tough game against Shawinigan. They were a great team, the Quebec League champions. The Bulldogs had eliminated Edmonton, the Western League champions, the game before, get the semifinal against the Quebec League champions. So we were saying on the way home, forget the Memorial Cup final. We should have been Canadian champion. We eliminated the other two champions. And that's not to have sour grapes. It was a wonderful year.
I understand that.
But we eliminated the other two champions. And when Yanni scored that goal, for me, the moment wrote itself. And that's what I said on the call. It was 3 years to the day he was drafted by the Bulldogs. Mishak lifts them to their first Memorial Cup final. It was just a beautiful story, and the stories behind the stories, nobody has ever known how injured Yanni was. I was there watching him get taped up before every game. You were going to get him out of the lineup with the jaws of life. He might not have been able to move, and he was still going to play. And the heart on that kid is something really special. And now you're seeing it. He kind of struggled in his first year in the AHL last year, and people kind of wondering about him. Now he's succeeding because now he's healthy. Now he's ready to go. Everybody forgets we were right to the end of June in the Memorial Cup. The guys didn't have an off season.
No, it was late.
And now you're seeing all those guys that were part of that team succeeding at the next level. And it's not a surprise. They were all really special guys that battled through a lot on that run. I think every one of them would have a story about how banged up they were right to the end, and to do what they did was spectacular.
You know, and it's funny you talk about the fact that at that tournament in St. John that you beat the W champs, you beat the Q champs, and amongst the disappointment of losing that home game to the Sea Dogs, you know, and again, both of us there, you know what, even in defeat, as a media, as a fan guy here, boy, that atmosphere was amazing. Going in, but before the game started, and everyone's coming out, and they had a real nice light show to start. And the people out east, I mean, they're legendary for it. How nice and friendly they are.
They were spectacular,
right? But you know, they were cheering for their team as we were cheering for the Bulldogs as well. But what I will always take from that was the words of the team, but especially the head coach Jay McKee, of what he said, and you kind of rubbed on it there, that he said, no matter what happens here, we are the champion of champions. Yep. And I will always remember that, even in all that disappointment.
Yeah, we lost a tournament, we won a championship. And we were the championship team of the champions that were there. No disrespect to St. John. They had a heck of a team.
They had like 30 days off before playing the tournament.
They were eliminated in the first round of the Quebec League playoffs. The Bulldogs had just been through a war with the Windsor Spitfires.
Oh, yes.
The Edmonton Oil Kings were as beat up as the Bulldogs were. They went through the Western playoffs, and they earned their way in. And you look back at their team with Jake Neighbors and Dylan Gunther and the names on that group as well. They didn't have the best showing of themselves. It would have been really interesting, and I know there's no way that you can do it because the timing just wouldn't have worked. But if you could have given each of those teams 30 days to get healthy, I think you would have seen a really different Memorial Cup. I still think that the best two teams, roster, talent, together, were Hamilton and Edmonton in that tournament. I would have loved to have seen if we could have gotten the Bulldogs healthy and the Oil Kings could have got healthy, what it would have looked like if those two teams had played each other 100%.
There's no doubt. I mean, I remember Steos was playing with a separated shoulder. I mean, it was guys were beat up. But great memories, great teams, and let's hope that, you know, this year's edition of the Bulldogs, whether they're playing in Brantford or Hamilton, can set some new history and make some new memories. And who knows, maybe there's a trip down to Michigan for a Memorial Cup. Who knows?
It's a lot closer this year.
Yeah, it's a lot closer this year.
We don't have to take a flight this time.
No, and fans can get down there, take a drive there. Let's talk about you, Reed Duthie, because you are a special individual, and I think one of the things that really stands out to me is that this love for broadcasting has not just was something you ran into. It was a passion that you have honed, you have started with, you went to school, you've done all the right things, and I think you've learned the lesson that in the broadcasting business, especially when you're young, you never say no.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and it's been 15 years now that I've been doing play-by-play or some form of broadcasting, and I have given a shot to just about anything I could get my hands on because I wanted the experience. And you talked about it a little bit earlier. I've done basketball, baseball, volleyball. I did women's roller derby up at Mountain Arena, pro wrestling, mixed martial arts, boxing, rugby, anything that I could get my hands on to give it a try and get experience behind the microphone. It may not have always been perfect. It may not have always been my best call, but it was an experience that I wanted to learn from. And as long as I got better every time I went out, that was what I was striving for. That was the difference for me in terms of it just being, a hobby, something that you do to really wanting to make it a career. Was I've got to get better every time I get on the microphone. And when I started, one of the best pieces of advice I got was Todd Crocker. Well, two pieces of advice I got from Todd Crocker, who now does the Toronto Marlies. And I am so lucky to be able to call him a friend and a mentor. I had hair down to my shoulders when I started, and he said, "You got to get the moss off the shower sandals." Gotcha, Todd. So I cut it back a little. I still got a little lettuce going on, but I cut it back. And when he reviewed some of my tapes early on, and I'm the first one to admit, I was super excited just to be in the broadcast booth. I still get excited every time I go. And every time I get to do a Bulldogs game, it's Christmas Day. I love being up there. I'm so excited. But he said, you got a great call, but you got to bring it down a little bit. Because if you're always up here, there's nothing special.
Yes.
You got to bring it down a little bit so that you got somewhere to go. And for me, that was the ultimate light bulb moment. Because I thought, well, why does every time I reviewed Mount, and I'm my own harshest critic. I'm sure you're the same way.
No, exactly.
Everything sounds kind of the same. That was the moment the light bulb went ding. Oh. And I started putting that into practice, and I would listen to myself back and go, okay, that sounds a lot better. I can still improve this, and this, but that sounds way, way better. And I'm sure that I still have moments where people probably listen and go, oh, he's excited tonight. But that was where it kind of all clicked for me of how to not just announce, but how to have that conversation with your listeners. How to make it feel like, as my longtime broadcast partner, Troy Islikar, said, we're two guys sitting next to you at the bar or on the couch.
That's right.
Talking about the game. And we get excited in the big moments, but when it's just play, we're just talking to you. That was where, to me, it all really started to come together.
And, I always remember talking about the late Danny Gallivan, is that Dave Hodge, and then you're talking about hockey heroes here, always said the wonderment of Danny Gallivan was his ability to not be so great in the first, not be so great in the second, but in the third, he came on. As the game builds, it's its crescendo. And that is something that broadcasters have to learn. That not every goal is a Stanley Cup winner.
That's right.
and that you bring it, and that when you hit that moment, Chris Cuthbert's another guy that does it. And you start to hear his voice get a little high because he's so into it in the third period or overtime, because that's when you need to be at your very, very best. And I know you have a Boston Bruin hero that probably a couple of them from those that are guys for you that you've mentored yourself after.
Fred Cusick was the voice of the Bruins when I was growing up. And
Channel 38.
That's right. Yep. Channel 38. And he did a little bit on Nesson towards the end when the rights went over. And my earliest memory of a Bruins game, and I know I watched it long before that because my dad's told me stories. I mean, I was born during the night the lights went out in '88 in the Boston Garden. And my dad's running in and out of the delivery room to find out what the score is, because this is a Stanley Cup final. And then my mom found out later what he did when he stayed was he had the nurses coming back in and out to tell him what the score was. It's my dad, and diehard Bruin guy. And he told me all the times that he'd have me on his knee watching the Bruins games and big games. But the first one I really remember was being put down to bed, and this would be early 90s, 92, 93 maybe. Sneaking back down after Mom went to sleep because I knew Dad was watching the game, and I could hear it from downstairs. I could hear Fred Cusick's voice. And I get to the top of the stairs of the basement, and Dad sees me and goes, "What are you doing up?" I said, "Bruins." All right. He brings me down, and that became our thing. We really bonded together over watching the game. We still do it. If we're not in the same house, we'll text each other during all the games. But hearing Fred Cusick and Derek Sanderson, and the way
the ultimate homer,
Jack Edwards. Hearing Fred Cusick and Derek Sanderson was so special because their relationship back and forth on the air, and it's something I've tried to emulate with Troy and Norm Miller, my two color guys, who are, I love them both to death. It's like having two crazy uncles you just love. And the way they would go back and forth and talk about the game, and then the way Fred would call the game, and he would describe it. It was like he was painting a beautiful picture. And listening to him call Ray Bourque and Cam Neely and some of those great Bruins teams of the early 90s, and even in through the mid-90s when the playoff streak snapped and they were on the downside, you could always count on Fred to find the bright side for you, and just the way he could do it and the way he could paint it, and just the beautiful sound of listening to Fred Cusick call a game. I wanted to make people feel the way he made me feel as a kid watching those games. And I'll never forget him calling scores Ray Bourque. Ray Bourque was my hero growing up as a hockey player. And to have all that together as a kid was just so special that I knew 4 or 5 years old, I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to do that.
Yeah, Cusack, and I go back as far even the 80s when the Sabres and Bruins used to, as the Sabres might be my team, having some wars. And I always remember a game, I guess back then those series were 5 games, and him scoring a game-winning goal, Brad Park, in overtime. It scores! Like, it just beat Bob Sauvé.
1983, Brad Park in overtime.
Like, it was scrambled on the ice, and the puck somehow gets out to Brad Park, and he just fires it in the net, and of course the Garden goes wild, and I was crushed again as a Sabres fan.
You got us back in the mid-'90s with Jay McKee and Dominic Hasek.
Guys. Don't even go there as well, too. When I have the coach, and I got to ask him a couple questions about those teams. But, but now your Bruins guy now, Jack Edwards. I mean, that guy, he has built a resume as well, too, that I think is something that you would agree is something that you would like to follow as well, too, covering that team.
Absolutely. He's been the voice of the Bruins now for almost 20 years. Everybody talks about Jack being a homer, but you know what? When you're watching the regional broadcast, I think everybody wants that a little bit. Yeah, everybody wants that.
I used to say that about Generette. He's the Sabres broadcaster.
That's right. And when that's what your goal is, that's what your spot says. I'm the Bulldogs. I'm the voice of the Bulldogs. My call is going to slant towards the Bulldogs. Jack Edwards is the voice of the Bruins. His call is going to slant towards the Bruins. He has just an amazing voice. And the way that he could follow the play and the things that he would come up with, I've taken some of them myself, and I've tried to share them back. I've gotten to know Jack just a little bit. He is such a nice man and very willing to help and very willing to listen. And I've really enjoyed just the times I've had the opportunity to pick his brain just a little bit. And I really enjoy getting to listen to him, and some of the speeches he came up with, like after the Bruins knocked out the Habs in 2011, and he related it to the Boston Tea Party. And it just, some of the stuff, it's out there, but it gets you going. You're like, yes, that's it. Or there was a great hit, and only fans of A Space Odyssey would get it. And it opened the pod bay doors, Hal. And it cracked me right up. And just some of the beauty stuff that he comes up with, and to have that role on Ness and to be the voice of the Bruins for that long, you got to be doing something right.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And I also think of a moment that I think made Hamiltonians real proud. I know it made me real proud. I think it was what was the name of that show? Sorry, I'm forgetting here about Hometown Hockey on Sportsnet on a Sunday. And all of a sudden, is that Reed?
Oh.
Is that Reed that I hear on this broadcast?
It's happened to me twice now where I've actually been at a Bulldogs game in my office, finishing up at the end of the night, writing the article and that. And all of a sudden, my phone will start blowing up. Hey, you're on CBC. No, I'm not. I'm sitting in my office. What are you talking about? No. They just played your clip, and Steve Stais was on the show, and he helped introduce it. And Ron McLean has put me over big a couple of times where I've just been flabbergasted. One was on the Hometown Hockey, and one was after Mason McTavish made his way back from the Olympics. And to hear my name be mentioned by Ron McLean, I don't know that I ever had that on my bingo card of life. But that was a moment where I got to sit back and I laughed because I never thought that would happen. I didn't get into this thinking that I was going to be the voice of Hockey Night in Canada. Would I love to? Yeah. What Canadian kid wouldn't? But to absolutely hear Ron McLean say, Reed Duthie, and it's a great call. Wow. I stopped. That moment, I think I probably maybe teared up a little bit. And
how could you not?
Yeah, and like my parents calling me about it, and you get lost in those moments.
Mm-hmm. That's a great moment, dude. Like that, you should be. I mean, I know you're proud of it, but you should be even more proud of it, because I do know a lot of people were proud of you in that situation, because they're like, I know that guy, or many people that have been with you, or people that have been in the broadcast booth with you, people that have been in the broadcast truck, seeing you do your thing and look to accomplish your goal. And I guess it's only fair to say, I mean, I think of someone that called Bulldogs games for a long, long time as the American Hockey League. And now he's calling games for the Calgary Flames on radio. So I would presume that's your trajectory. That's where you want to be.
I hope I get that opportunity. I mean, I'm working towards it. I'm incredibly happy being the voice of the Bulldogs and being where I am, but that opportunity is something that I would love to take a shot at. And I've had the chance to do the European Champions League of Hockey, which was a lot of fun, other than when they gave me the Polish team that wore white jerseys with white numbers and a red outline.
Ooh,
that was,
ouch.
And doing that on a screen was not the easiest thing in the world, but it was a lot of fun. And to have that and be able to say, yeah, I've done that. I've done the AHL. I've done the European Champions League. It does kind of feel to me like an opportunity to the NHL is next, or maybe a full-time gig in the American Hockey League to build towards the NHL. That is where I want to be, and I'll keep working for it until I get that opportunity. If it never comes, it never comes, and I'm happy to have been able to do this in my hometown and just outside my hometown for so many years. But that's the opportunity that I hope that comes my way.
You know, I always think of that in that situation, because you're right. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But yet, when you put it in perspective, if you were to walk away as the Bulldogs play-by-play man, the stack of resumes that would want your job is massive, right? You're right there. So that's the best part about it, knowing that I'm doing something important right now. Do I want to get to that next level? Absolutely. So does every hockey player.
Yeah.
Every OHL player wants to be in the National Hockey League. Every player in the American Hockey League is looking for that shot to get back up to the top team. So you're right there, Reed. That's the wildest thing. Enjoy the ride.
Oh, I certainly do. I think you can probably tell by the way I call the games. I just love being a part of it. Just a small part of the success of the Bulldogs I'm so happy with. And that's the way I look at it every day, Bubba. I walk into my job and I go, there are thousands of people who would just want to be where I am. How can I ever be upset? And they say to me at the Bulldogs office at times, you're happy and you're excited to be here all the time. Well, who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
I get to do a job that so many other people would want to do. If I came in every day miserable, who would want to work with me? Why would you want me here when there would be other people that are just clawing at the bit to get here? Of course I'm happy to be here. It's what I've wanted to do since I was 5 years old. There's very few things in a day that you can say to me that are going to make me mad. I'm very excited, very happy, and I'm always going to find the bright side of every situation that we're in.
Now, I know where you want to be professionally at the end of the road, but there are other things along the way that you take your shot at, and I know we've talked about your versatility. There's one thing I want to ask you about. What is going on with you in this professional wrestling? What is happening here?
I grew up a massive fan of pro wrestling, and WCW specifically. My house was one of the ones on the block with cable because we had to have TV 38s to have to watch the Bruins. Well, with those super stations, you got TBS. I used to watch WCW Saturday night every week, 6:05 Saturday night every week, and watch Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, Barry Windham, and the Midnight Express, the Freebirds, the Steiners, all those. I fell in love with pro wrestling. I got out of it a bit as I got a little bit older, and it just didn't appeal to me as much anymore. And then I kind of got back in after WCW had closed, and there was a couple new things popping up. I kind of got that itch to get, just to watch it and have some fun with it. Everybody knows what pro wrestling is. It's predetermined. Never say fake. It's predetermined. What they do in the ring is not fake.
You get beat up if you say fake.
I will always say that it's not fake because I've stood in the ring. I've taken a bump on a ring apron. It sucks.
I've taken a forearm across. Like, one day I'll show you.
It is not fun. It is not fun at all. One of my best friends hit me with a right hand and dropped me on the ring apron. And it's a hard landing. So for those guys to do it over and over and over again, it's not fake. But we had a company locally, Alpha One Wrestling, that they were looking for a new announcer. And I thought, what the heck? I'll reach out. I did, and a guy by the name of Julian, who has become one of my best friends, Julian Masevsky. He goes by Ethan Page in AEW. We've got to know each other over the past decade plus. He brought me in not having any idea who I was. This was before I got the Bulldogs job, before I got any of that. And he called the matches. One day, one afternoon, take a shot at it. Call the matches, and we'll see if we want to keep you around. Well, we just did another one in March. The promotion went on hiatus for 4 years because of COVID, and Julian got the shot to go to AEW, and he finally brought it back, and we're still back together, and we text all the time. So, over a decade later, they must still like me because they still keep bringing me back to do it. It's a blast. It's a blast. I can't have more fun than getting to call these guys, step into the ring, and getting to do wrestlers from around the world stepping into Hamilton to do it. And because of that, I met a guy, Dan, who runs Glory Pro Wrestling in St. Louis. And he said, "Do you want to do play-by-play for my promotion?" Well, I can't come down to St. Louis every month. That'd be a heck of a transit bill. He said, No. We'll beam it up to you. Yeah, all right, I can see the Glory Pro intro. We'll beam it up to you. You do it from your home studio. Well, I can do that. And as that's gone along, we went from doing live events on YouTube to now we have an actual TV show, Glory Pro Ascend. It's on Caffeine TV, and it keeps growing and getting into different markets and different places. You can see it all the way around the world now. It releases every Sunday night. And it just keeps building, and it's one of those things that I just enjoy the ride. I had no idea how far it was going to go when I started doing it. I was happy to do one show. Over 10 years later, they keep asking me to come back, keep asking me to do it. I'm going to keep doing it as long as they want me.
It's a wonderful thing because I'm sure there's a seriousness to the hockey, but this has got to be just, it allows your imagination. Like, you could have so much more fun. You could actually take on a role as some kind of character as your broadcasting self. Is there truth to that?
There is. And in fact, in the rebirth of Alpha One, I've become a bit of an authority figure. The whole storyline of the return is that Ethan Page and I are the broadcast team, but because everyone knows Ethan Page owns the company, he has given me the power to make matches. So I can walk into the ring after a match and grab the microphone and do an interview, and if somebody's mouthing off at me, all right, you got to wrestle him next month. How do you like that? So it's so much fun that I get to be able to do that. And I like to say I patterned myself kind of after a Tony Schiavone or a Jim Ross, and I get to be that character, but with a little bit of the matchmaker to it as well. And that adds a whole different perspective, and I'm just over the moon that I get the opportunity to do it.
Well, I'll just leave it on this here. I will say, you say Schiavone, you talked about Ross. Reed, just remember that every once in a while, those guys had to defend themselves. So get ready. I don't know what you have in your arsenal.
I got a microphone. We did a match actually years ago. Josh Hill, local MMA fighter, was into the ring against Scotty O'Shea, who made his return. He's had some health issues, made his return to Alpha One at the last show. But this was back in 2013-14. And I was managing Josh. I'm at ringside in my suit. And I climb up on the ring apron because I see Scotty's about to hit Josh with a keyboard of all things because he's the hacker. So I pop up and I grab the keyboard and I take it away from him. And I get Scotty to spin around. He cocks back. And I've got that keyboard. And I throw it into Josh Hill. I took the punch for Josh so that he could waffle Scotty with that keyboard. Keys flew everywhere. And I land on the ring apron. And I just about killed my hip. And I roll in after the match because I got to raise my guy's hand. And Josh looks at me and says, "That looked like it hurt us." It's because it did hurt.
I need to see the viz of that. I
can send it to you. I've still got it. That was so much fun.
Hey, Reed, this has been a whole lot of fun. And, like I said, the best is yet to come. You're working hard. You're doing your thing. We're entertained by your work. We're enjoying your work. And again, on a professional side as well, too, I just hope for success for the Bulldogs during the 2023-24 season, and that maybe something special happens, because it'd be great to hear your voice calling a championship.
I appreciate that so much, and it's a pleasure to be here with you, Bubba. I grew up East End Hamilton watching CH. So to actually be in this studio sitting here doing this, it's just another check in the box of something really special that I've had the opportunity to do, and it's why I'm smiling so big today. It's great to be here with you. I'm a big fan of yours, so I always cherish the opportunity I get to sit in here with you.
I appreciate that, Reed.
You bet.
All right, we'll talk soon. Hey, folks, if sports with a Southern Ontario twist is certainly your thing, the Sportsline Podcast do want to hear from you. Please subscribe, comment, hit that thumbs up or 5-star button so you always get the latest, the greatest of all the fine podcasts here on CHCH, including the likes of the Trending Now and Newsmaker series with Louis Butko. for the brilliant hands and minds that make this production possible. Thanks as always, and we'll see you tomorrow.